Hi, my name is David Schmidt. I'm a seminarian for the Diocese of Pittsburgh. God willing, I'll be ordained a deacon next year in June 2021. So reflecting on my journey up until this point, as I'm approaching diaconate ordination, it's really amazing to think about just how the Lord has worked in my life up until this point. Because growing up, the priesthood was never really on my heart, never really on my mind. I always had a desire to be in the sports industry in some way. My dream job was to be a GM of a baseball team. And I also had this great desire in my heart to get married. And so I went to college, got a degree in sports management. And it was really during my college years where I really started to encounter the Lord in a deeper way. Again, I had this great desire for marriage on my heart. And I remember coming across a prayer by St. Anthony of Padua. And in this prayer, he talked about how we all have this desire to love and to be loved. But until we're satisfied with God and God alone, we won't be able to have this love that we desire in our hearts. And when I first heard this prayer, to be honest, like the first thing that came to my mind was the priesthood, like this notion of God alone. And I kind of quickly dismissed that thought because I didn't want anything to do with the priesthood at the time. And I also thought the notion of God alone was kind of boring, to be honest. That means, I couldn't really desire the things that I desired in my life, like sports and all these different things. This was my conception of what it was for God alone. But in that moment, I desired this so much, to have this person in my life, to have this love that I've yearned for my whole life. So in that moment, I said, all right, Lord, I'll do whatever it takes to experience this love that you've desired for me, or that you have in store. And it was at this point that I really started to take my faith more seriously. And in doing so, I started to discover God's love in a way I never had before. So growing up, God to me was just, going to church, being a good kid. That was kind of the extent of my faith. But as I started to encounter him more deeply in college, I started to encounter the depths of his love and his joy. And it put in this desire in my heart to want to share that with others. So I finished my degree at Cal U, and I still had a desire in my heart to get married, to be in the sports industry. So I went to get my master's degree at Old Dominion University. And it was there at Old Dominion that I reached a point in my faith life where I was like, how can I give everything to this? And it was in that moment where the priesthood popped up again, and I was hesitant with it, but I was accepting of it more. And so I wrestled with it for about 2 years, mainly the aspect of giving up marriage. And so I ended up finishing my degree at Old Dominion. I was working in the athletic department during that time as a grad assistant. Went back home, got a spiritual director, and during that time also met with the vocations director, Father Friedi at the time. And in my meetings with my spiritual director, I remember this one meeting I had with him. I remember going to him and being like, Father, why is the Lord asking me to give up something as good as a beautiful, holy Catholic woman in marriage? And I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, God will never ask you to give up something without giving you something else in return. And at that moment, it completely switched my perspective on discerning the priesthood, because I didn't look at the priesthood as something like, oh, I'm making this big sacrifice to go into. Now it was like a question of intrigue of, if God is asking me to give up something as good as marriage, what does he have in store for me in the priesthood? And thinking of that moment, and then the surrender that I had to enter in the seminary about 6 months later, where I knew if I entered seminary, that meant I was never going to date, never going to marry, never going to have all these things that I desired my entire life. But I trusted that I would be happy. And so I made the leap of faith and I entered seminary. And what the Lord has done in my heart as he continues to take me deeper into his love, this whole notion of God alone has become a reality. And just to know that his love is more than enough. And as I approach diaconate and ordination, and I go to make these promises of celibacy and these promises to give my life to the church and everything that you give up on this path, I have a lot of joy and excitement in my heart and a fire in my heart to want to share this with other people even deeper, that God's love alone is enough for you. And just, for all of us, this is for all of us, not just for people who are discerning a vocation. So I just ask for your prayers during this time again as I get ready for ordination, and I'll be praying for you. Thank you.